tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us. You know, Brian, even as the gray hair comes in, we're still considered young farmers. And I think it's interesting. You get questions all the time about how does a young guy get started into agriculture? We're going to talk about that today.
We're also going to discuss alfalfa and things you can do to increase your production as you go throughout the season. There are a lot of different things that alfalfa farmers are doing across the country, and I guess I'm interested too in that because some of those things apply to other crops as well.
Well, Brian, one thing that applies to everywhere you're at is weed control, and our weed of the week is a big challenge, to say the least. We'll talk about that later in the show, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Every year on our farm, we host a major field day during the summer. This year's is Thursday, July 25th, and we'd just like to invite you to come.
Well, you know, Brian, right where we're standing, there's going to be a lot of equipment running, actually. We've got a big ride and drive area, and you know, there are a lot of new technologies coming out on the equipment side of farming, and we like to have those things at our field day so you can actually get in a tractor and try out something new. Try out some of the different things like auto steer, for example. Now that's been out for a while, but there are new things and new enhancements that are coming out all the time. So you can see brand new planters, combines, sprayers, tractors, the whole 9 yards. And actually we're going to have the debut of some new equipment in grain handling that you've never seen anywhere else, other than you may have caught just a little snippet of it on our farm from harvest last fall. But it's going to be unveiled at our field days. So there's going to be some brand new things here too that we're pretty excited about.
We're also really excited every year about all the different trials we run on our farm. We have lots of things going on because basically what we're trying to do is figure out what works and what doesn't work. So I find it interesting when you talk to all these big companies about, oh, I've got this new thing coming out, that new thing. They often will talk about the good side of it. They don't tell you about the downside of it. And so we'll actually go through all our plots as we go throughout the day. So you'll get the opportunity to hear the pluses and the minuses with many of these new technologies.
Well, speaking of new technologies, there are new traits coming, and we're excited to have some of the brand new traits in corn and soybeans right here on our field day. In fact, you know, it's a little different than just raising a crop, Brian, because we have to do crop destruct on some of these things, or we can only raise them for so long. And really right after the field day, we've got to destroy some of it because they want to protect that technology. So before it gets into those reproductive stages, we'll have to destroy a little bit of it. But you'll actually get to see some of those things out here. So there'll be brand new herbicides getting put on brand new traits that you've never seen before and probably won't be on your farm for a couple of years. Here's a great way to get a heads up and an early start on those new traits.
One other side that I always love about the field days, we have farmers come from all over the country. Last year we had farmers from 24 different states and 2 Canadian provinces. And so if nothing else, if you just wander around all day and talk to other farmers, you can get an awfully good crop report on what's happening around the country. And I would say too, we start the field day at 8 a.m. So we've got a nice cool morning most of the time. And we do have accommodations for if we get excessive heat as well. So many of the tents are air conditioned. We've got a building that's air conditioned. So we do go from 8 a.m. all the way to 7 p.m. There are things you can see all during the day.
Now you could certainly walk around all day and look at plots and be out in corn and soybeans and wheat and a few other crops. Or you could sit down for a little bit too and hear some of our speakers. We've got some really high quality and high powered speakers. They're going to talk about raising better wheat and better corn and better soybeans and just what's going on with agriculture in our country and internationally as well, to keep you up to speed so you know how to make better decisions for your farm.
In addition to looking at crops and hearing guest speakers, you can also see some live field demonstrations. We will be doing live tiling. We've got some other ride and drive areas. And in addition to that, we do have a water quality demonstration that we're doing in conjunction with South Dakota State University once again this year. So a lot of things going on there. And I guess I'm just really excited about it. I have a great time every year. If nothing else, I'm just talking to farmers from all over the country and just finding out, hey, what are you doing to make your crops better? I think that's a lot of fun.
Well, there's certainly a lot of reasons to check out our field day. It's July 25th this year. It runs all day. There's lots of things going on for the whole family. So if you can, join us. You'll learn a lot.
Yeah, just go to agphd.com to learn more. You can also go to agphd.com to learn more about our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you what it is coming up later in the show.
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans, an advanced soybean product with tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate. Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans. Extend your control.
Your equipment's ready. The seed's in the barn. You have a strategy to overcome the challenges you'll face, and your crop protection products are pretty well locked in. But maybe you still haven't finalized your fertilizer plans. If not, visit agroliquid.com today. With products formulated for superior nutrient uptake, unsurpassed application flexibility, and proven by years of extensive research, this may be the season to take your yields to the next level using agriculture liquid fertilizers.
Today's Case IH equipment is packed with industry-leading technology, and Titan Machinery has the experts to make it perform to its maximum potential. We have a team of specialists and the entire Titan Machinery network to provide you with the expertise to keep up with today's advanced machines. Whether it be for your Case IH planters, sprayers, or precision farming equipment, our experts have the answers to get the most out of your equipment investment. Maximize your productivity with Titan Machinery. Better solutions.
Today's number is 3. You can see it everywhere, and it can stand for almost anything. But when it comes to protecting the nitrogen that feeds your crops, 3 is the special number that sets Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager apart, because Nutrisphere N is proven to reduce all 3 forms of nitrogen loss, which adds up to keeping more nitrogen and yield where it belongs. So ask for Nutrisphere N, the stabilizer that fights nitrogen loss 3 ways.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
Earlier in the year, we talked a little about weed control in alfalfa, but what can a farmer do at this time of the year to make his alfalfa crop better?
Well, you know, Brian, I got a little story to tell you. I was talking to a large hog producer, and so they have a lot of manure to deal with every year. And I said, you know, what's your crop rotation and where are you putting the manure and this kind of thing? He said, I love having alfalfa in my rotation because, man, does that just soak up the nutrients. It just takes so many nutrients out of the ground. I can put all kinds of manure on that ground because we need all the nutrition we can get. And it got me thinking, you know, I think of a lot of guys that raise alfalfa in our area. How much fertilizer are they really putting on?
Well, you know, this is the same discussion we have with almost every crop, especially the crops not named corn, because it seems like every farmer fertilizes heavy for corn, and then it's almost like we forget about it for the other crops. I mean, wheat doesn't get near the attention that corn does, soybeans especially. Alfalfa for sure doesn't get the attention. So we always advise you, do soil sampling. Do plant tissue analysis and fertilize for an appropriate crop. And how you know how much fertility you need is you can just go to, we've got a free Ag PhD smartphone or iPad app that you can download, and you just punch in your crop and what your yield goal is. So like in the case of alfalfa, it's how many tons are you going to produce, and let's just see how many nutrients are we removing from the soil.
Well, when you think about alfalfa, what are you doing with it? You're selling it to somebody with livestock, or you're using it yourself, but you're using it for feed, because it has a lot of nutritional value.
Right.
Where do those nutrients come from? They either come from applied nutrition to the field, or they come from the soil. And if you're continually taking it out of the soil, you're going to be left with a nutrient depleted soil out there that isn't going to raise great crops afterwards. So that's one big concern that I've got. So in between cuttings, you have a great opportunity to get more fertilizer out there in one form or another, just to get things going and perk that crop up and get a better, more nutritious cutting the next time you go.
The other thing that we often talk to alfalfa producers about is right after you're cutting, make sure you're spraying insecticide, or for that matter, 7 days before you're cutting. It seems like there are always bugs in the alfalfa field, and if you don't think there are, at least go take a look. So you say, well, I don't want to invest money in insecticide every time I go out and make a cutting. Just go out with a sweep net and just see if you've got bugs. If you don't, great. But boy, if you have bugs out there, especially things like leafhoppers, alfalfa weevils, grasshoppers, things like that, I mean, things that can really take a lot of tonnage from you, that's not good. And not only do they take tonnage, they also, in just the feeding that they do, they also can inject disease. So that's an additional problem.
Well, and insecticide isn't this huge investment anymore. It used to cost quite a few dollars per acre.
Yeah.
Now, in a lot of cases, it may cost $2 or $3 an acre. Well, that's no big deal. And you think about the value of what your hay is worth, wow. That's a pretty easy way to get a good return on investment.
Now, I mentioned how they can inject disease. Even if they don't inject disease into your plant, like the leafhoppers will, for example, they can just open it up. In other words, there are little cuts, little openings in your plant, and that's where disease can get in. So a lot of alfalfa producers are actually starting to use fungicide now, and I know it may seem a little weird. You may never thought about that in your alfalfa, but there is a lot of headline and other fungicides that are getting used with pretty good success.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. When you think about alfalfa hay and you're looking at that, you want to keep a lot of leaves on those plants. Well, what happens with your plants? Most of the time, those lower leaves are all diseased and they fall off and they've got no value for you. If you can treat early in the cutting, right after that regrowth gets started a little bit, treat those lower leaves and protect them from disease. And yes, that's where you're going to see a lot of it, is in the bottom, 6 inches to a foot of your alfalfa. You'll see a lot of that disease. Well, if you get some nice regrowth on there and you can hold all those leaves, think about how much more nutrition you're going to have, what your relative feed value is going to be, and what you're going to get for that alfalfa hay. It's going to be tremendous. It does make a lot of sense. The other thing about alfalfa that I think is really cool is you're going to get multiple cuttings. So you're going to get 2, 3, 4 cuttings depending on where you're at. And when you're getting multiple cuttings, you've got a chance to try new things several times during the year and learn from them. Like with our corn and soybean crops that we're talking about all summer, we only get one chance to do it right. We've got one date to plant. We've got one shot at killing the weeds. We've got to wait a whole another year before we can try something different. With alfalfa, you get multiple times during the year to basically give yourself a report card and see if you're doing the right things and making smart decisions. And you know what? Then, okay, you take a cutting and now you get to do it all over again. And I know it's a lot of work. I know you stay busy all summer with alfalfa, but you just have to keep out there and keep after it. There's tremendous profit potential this year, and there's a great chance for you to do things right.
Well, the other thing, Darren, as you were talking about all these things you can do in alfalfa, I was just thinking about something that's a little bit outside the box compared to normal thinking on the farm, and that's biological products. We've been discussing this for the last few years, plant growth hormones, those kind of things. We've used personally on some alfalfa has been Mega Grow, and that has had some success. We've also used AC97 that's got hormones in it, as well as some fertilizer. I mean, there are a number of different things that you could try in terms of this biological plant growth hormone thing on your farm.
Well, the other thing, Brian, is just changing up the timing when you're cutting that hay. Now, I know a lot of big operations will use, a date on the calendar and say every 28 days, or maybe a few days here or there, depending on what your growing conditions are. But every 28 days, we're going to cut alfalfa. Well, that's good, and it's nice to have a plan in place. But for some guys, it's, I'll cut it when I get around to it and when the weather looks decent, and all of a sudden your alfalfa is in full bloom and your feed value and digestibility could be on the decline. So just paying more attention to, all right, when am I going to cut, and try to be very precise with that to maximize the value of that hay. That's a big deal, and it could be a huge moneymaker for your farm.
Well, we've thrown out a lot of things here, and don't get us wrong. I mean, we're not trying to talk you into spending $1 zillion on alfalfa or anything else. All we're ever trying to do is give you some ideas to think about, things that you can try on your farm and say, oh yeah, I like these 6 things. That's really helping my production. These couple of things, I tried them, didn't really have a lot of success on my farm, okay? But at least we want to get you outside your comfort zone a little bit, try some new things, because we want to see you make more money and do better with your alfalfa, just like with any crop.
Well, you will do a lot better, especially in pasture and rangeland, if you can control our Weed of the Week. We'll give you some tips coming up later in the show.
What's new for 2013? Challenge 2050. Challenge 2050 is a 2-component system consisting of a nutrient and a biological additive. This groundbreaking fertilizer contains mycorrhizal fungi, which provide an extended transport system that allows water and nutrients to be delivered directly into the root. Challenge 2050 can increase yield and efficiency of your standard fertilizer program. Challenge 2050 is the future of fertilizer. Call TJ Technologies or your fertilizer dealer and get Challenge 2050 today.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrack technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Speed, strength, and efficiency make Capello corn heads a head above the rest. Built with polymer components that exceed industry standards, Capello corn heads continue to push the boundaries for maximizing grain retention while using less energy. Visit CapelloUSA.com and learn more about Capello's state-of-the-art chopping technology that cuts cleaner, allowing your horsepower to remain where it belongs, with your combine, so you can harvest faster in all weather conditions. Add to that an amazing folding feature, and it's clear to see why Capello is a head above the rest.
So Darren, I had a question just the other day from a young farmer, and he said, you know, it's kind of tough. It takes a lot of dollars of investment to get started in farming. What do you have for me for suggestions as a young farmer coming back in, whether it's going to be with my dad or on my own?
Well, okay, first of all, if you have a dad or an uncle or a relative that's willing to take you in and help you get started, that's a huge advantage. There's no question about it. For Brian and me to be where we're at today and to be able to farm the way we're farming right now, there's no way that we could have done that as soon as we did it without our dad having been farming, and, you know, really without his dad being a farmer before him. So there were just a lot of advantages that we had growing up on a farm and having our dad farm and having our dad willing to take us in on the farm
Well, yeah,
operation.
but let's take that a step further. Okay, so for our dad, he actually moved up from Iowa, and he worked for his dad for 10 years before he came up here and started farming on his own. And he said he got $50,000. That was basically his deal from his dad. He got paid $50,000 for those 10 years of work, working for his dad. So he came up here with 50 grand.
Well, let's do the same thing with our kids, Brian. Yeah, you worked for me for 10 years, I'll give you 50 grand.
Yeah, but I mean, you multiply that out, what would that be worth in today's dollars? 250,000, something like that maybe. So anyway, it was quite a few dollars back in those days, but I mean, he had obviously worked hard and done a lot of things on his farm and worked 10 years to get that amount of money. But anyway, when Dad came up here, he did get the opportunity to buy basically his wife's parents' farm, but he had to buy it for appraised value, so they never gave him anything. So really, he did kind of start out on his own from scratch. But back then, you could operate with little equipment, and, you know, people didn't have fancy stuff. I mean,
you don't have to have that now, Brian.
Well, that's true.
You honestly don't. And when you think about it, if you look at a brand new monstrous combine, yeah, it's a big investment, but that guy's also probably trading off his last machine that he had. And he's trading that to somebody that's maybe a little smaller farmer. And that guy is trading off his last machine. And when you think about it, if you're willing to buy something a little bit smaller and a little bit older and just do a little more maintenance on it, you can get into quite a bit of equipment for a low dollar amount. And that's fine. And that's a fine place to start. And so you start off with something a little bit smaller that you may have to do a little more maintenance on. But guess what? You're probably not farming that many acres when you're just getting started either.
Yes, but what most young farmers are doing is they're also doing custom work. Our dad did the same thing, and you see most young farmers doing this. And this is what I would tell you. You're basically trading hours to get those dollars. You're not going to make as many dollars an hour as some very experienced farmer that has a lot of land and everything else, but that's just the way it goes. So you got to start at ground level and do custom work for people, and there are all kinds of different custom work things that you can do nowadays.
Okay, well, I'll jump right back into that in just a second, but I was going to say the other thing here too is, let's just say that you've got a planter and you've got a friend that's got a combine. There's a lot of equipment sharing that goes on too, of, you know, hey, I can't afford to buy everything, and I know my dad did that as well, where He didn't have a windrower, for example, and his neighbor did, and he said, all right, I've got a baler and you've got a windrower, let's just work together and we can get the job done. And now neither one of us had to make a huge capital investment that really, frankly, a lot of that machinery just sits in the shed for 9 or 10 months out of the year. You only need it for a few months, and why own all that stuff? You can have somebody else own some of that equipment, and that helps as well.
Here's the way I look at this thing too. The average age of the farmer now is 57 years old. There are a lot of guys still farming at age 70, 75, and they don't want to do necessarily all the jobs they used to do. They don't want to do their own soil testing anymore. Plant tissue analysis is another thing. One of the big things we've been doing on our own farm is doing our own drain tile, putting our own tiling in. That's been tremendous, and you can make really good money in a very short amount of time putting tile in the ground.
There are just so many jobs, and a lot of times we call them $100 an hour jobs because that's how our dad really introduced us into that concept. And you look at your farm and just think about, okay, what does my dad not want to do? What does my dad not know how to do? All those things, and they may not be the most fun jobs right away. Maybe you say, well, my dad's not a great mechanic, so I guess I'll be a mechanic. Well, that's fine. You know what? You need to learn that skill anyway if you're going to be a farmer, to at least have some basic skills there. And what we find on a lot of farms, and you kind of touched on it, is a lot of guys don't understand their soils well enough. They're great at managing the above ground portion of the crop, but below ground, they really don't know all those things. They don't know all the chemistry and so forth that goes on. Study that. If you're going to college or you're going to a tech school, study more about soils and find out what's going on so you can help out on your operation, bring some knowledge in.
So anyway, farming can be very rewarding. It's just, it requires a lot of work, a lot of effort year-round, and the more you're willing to put in, generally speaking, the more you can get out long-term.
Well, when you talk about work, Brian, you are talking about our Weed of the Week. Have you identified this week's weed?
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You work to protect your farm's legacy and to keep it going. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our weed of the week is Leafy Spurge. Now, fortunately, we don't have a lot of issue in crop. Where we see Leafy Spurge more than anything is in ditches and in pastures.
Well, it's a perennial weed. It's a primary noxious weed. Almost everywhere you're going to find Leafy Spurge. So it's one of those that you're actually required by law to keep this weed under control. Now, there's a couple different ways you can go. You can certainly use some bugs that are out there and try and get them to proliferate, but the problem with them is it takes a little while to get that system going. So most farmers and ranchers are much more interested in chemical control. They can kill that weed now and keep it down so they get more grass growing, and then that grass is ultimately going to choke out anything that would come beyond it.
Now, the best thing for controlling Leafy Spurge in ditches, pasture, non-crop ground would be Tordon. Just keep in mind that Tordon kills trees. It also kills fish, so you have to keep it away from trees, and that means if you've got, say, a 50-foot tree, you want to be at least double the height of that tree away, so you got to be at least 100 feet away. Tordon has tremendous residual, so if you get a good strong rate of Tordon out there, you can eliminate Leafy Spurge in one shot for good.
Well, here's the problem though, Brian. A lot of guys in grassland and pasture land and ditches, they'll just use straight 2,4-D.
Well, you can do that, but you got to do it 3 times a year at a very strong rate.
Well, again, we're talking about a perennial weed. We can burn it down to the ground, but it is going to keep regrowing, so just keep after it. If that's all that you can use is 2,4-D, well, great. You can do it, but it's going to take a long time to get it under control.
Now a lot of people have switched to Milestone in pastures, but Milestone is not very good on Leafy Spurge. Tordon is by far the best thing, and we actually like straight Tordon, not a Grazon mix or something where it's Tordon plus 2,4-D. Hey, one last thing about Leafy Spurge that I think is interesting is you see those nice pretty yellow flowers, Darren, but that Leafy Spurge can actually shoot its seeds out, I don't even know, 50 feet maybe. It's just crazy. So you don't want to be walking anywhere near. You might need safety glasses when you're out in a Leafy Spurge patch.
I think you're a little bit nuts. But anyway, Leafy Spurge is our weed of the week, but it's not a weed to mess with. So make sure you get it under control quickly on your farm.
That's it for our weed of the week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
When Brian and I were growing up, we were involved in a lot of baling on our farm. Today, the machines are much better. We'll show you a couple reasons why in today's Iron Talk. I'll speak specifically to round balers today, as they're still the most popular large balers, and they're being used for many things these days with the beginnings of cellulosic ethanol production. When you get a new piece of equipment, one of the expectations is you'll have less downtime and maintenance than if you were running something old. One of the biggest improvements in round balers is right at the front, at the pickup. Old machines like the one we used to run didn't get a consistent flow of product moving into our baler, so our bale quality was less than perfect. Today, new round balers are often using a roller wind guard, which acts like a thumb to keep light material from building up and to keep a more continuous feed. This system is much more durable as well. The other big change is that we used to use belts exclusively to form the bale. Now rolls and belts are used, leading to a tighter, more dense bale with a flatter face and more square shoulders. The result is that your bales stand up to weather longer and are easier to stack, load, and transport. If baling is a big part of your operation, or if you're a younger guy who wants to get into farming but doesn't have enough land to do it yet, the newest round balers on the market are a significant upgrade from what we used to run on the farm. Depending on your farm size and the amount of custom work you do, this could be an excellent investment for your farm. With today's Iron Talk, I'm Darren Hefty.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Micronutrients are not optional for plants, they are essential. TJ Micromix is a profit-proven management tool that ensures the availability of essential secondary and micronutrients. Formulated as a dry granule or liquid, TJ Micromix is plant available, easy to mix and apply. The synergistic fertilizer mix delivers consistent yield response on a variety of crops by complementing an NPK fertilizer program. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your fertilizer dealer and get your TJ Micromix today.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
Honey Wagon? Can the sweet talk. Out here we treat manure, and when we talk treats, we don't mean cupcakes. Treating manure with More Than Manure Nutrient Manager can reduce solids in your pit or lagoon and ammonia levels in confinement buildings. PU, try N and P. MTM is the first and only nutrient manager proven to reduce nitrogen loss and phosphorus lockup. That's fertilizer loaded with yield potential. Looking for proof? Check the bin. Isn't that sweet? Results you can't ignore, a pit you finally can.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
Well, that's all time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Organic matter improves soil structure and tilth. It improves microbial activity and soil life. Organic matter allows soils to hold more water and nutrients for your crop. To learn more about building it, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.